Have you ever walked into a room and felt almost invisible? You see other people laughing, connecting, and somehow becoming the center of attention without looking like they're even trying. Meanwhile, you wonder what you're doing wrong. You replay conversations in your head. You think of better things you could have said hours later. You start avoiding social situations because they only seem to confirm what you've already begun to believe, that maybe you're just not the kind of person people naturally like. If that sounds familiar, keep watching, because what you're experiencing may have far less to do with who you are than with one skill that almost nobody teaches: charisma. And here's the surprising part. Charisma isn't something you're simply born with. Modern psychological research has repeatedly shown that many of the behaviors we associate with charismatic people can actually be learned, practiced, and strengthened over time. By the end of this video, you'll understand what charisma really is, why loneliness slowly destroys it, and the practical steps you can start taking today to completely change how other people experience you. Let's begin by clearing up one enormous misconception. Most people think charisma means being loud, funny, confident, or incredibly attractive. But if you've ever met someone who wasn't particularly handsome, wasn't rich, wasn't especially outgoing, yet everyone loved talking to them, you've already seen the truth. According to researchers who study interpersonal communication, charisma comes down to two qualities working together: warmth and competence. In simple terms, people feel that you genuinely care about them, and at the same time, they feel you have confidence and self-respect. Too much warmth without confidence, and people may like you but overlook you. Too much confidence without warmth, and people may admire you while keeping their distance. Real charisma balances both. This is good news. It means charisma isn't a personality type. It's a collection of behaviors that send signals to other people's brains. Unfortunately, loneliness interferes with almost every one of those signals. When you've been isolated for months or years, your brain starts treating every social interaction as a potential threat instead of an opportunity. You become hyper-aware of yourself. You constantly monitor whether you're saying the right thing, looking awkward, or being judged. Ironically, this intense self-focus makes it harder to notice the other person. And here's one of the biggest secrets about charismatic people. They aren't fascinating because they're constantly trying to be interesting. They're fascinating because they make other people feel interesting. Think back to someone you genuinely enjoyed talking with. Chances are, they weren't delivering brilliant speeches every few seconds. They listened, they reacted naturally, they made you feel heard. People rarely remember every word you said. They remember how they felt while talking to you. That's an incredibly powerful realization, because it means you don't have to become a comedian, philosopher, or motivational speaker overnight. You simply need to become more present. Presence may be the single most overlooked ingredient of charisma. When you're trapped in loneliness, your attention is split in three directions. One part is replaying your past mistakes. Another part is predicting future embarrassment. Only a tiny fraction is actually paying attention to the person standing in front of you. Charismatic people reverse that equation. For a few minutes, they make the other person feel like they're the only person in the room. This doesn't require magical social abilities. It requires curiosity. Instead of asking yourself, "Do they like me?" ask yourself, "What is this person like?" Notice their expressions. Listen carefully instead of preparing your next sentence. Ask follow-up questions because you're genuinely interested, not because you've memorized social techniques. Curiosity is attractive because it feels authentic. Now, let's talk about another trap that loneliness creates: negative thinking. When you've experienced rejection, disappointment, or years of isolation, it's easy to develop a mental habit of expecting the worst. They're probably bored. I sound stupid. They're just being polite. They'll forget me tomorrow. The problem is that your brain begins treating these thoughts as facts. Psychologists sometimes call this confirmation bias. Once you expect rejection, you unconsciously notice every tiny piece of evidence that seems to support that belief, while ignoring everything that contradicts it. Someone looks at their phone. They're bored. Someone ends the conversation because they have somewhere to go. They couldn't wait to leave. Meanwhile, you completely overlook the fact that they smiled, laughed, asked questions, and enjoyed talking with you. Your expectations slowly become your reality, not because they're true, because they influence how you behave. People who expect rejection often speak more quietly, smile less, avoid eye contact, end conversations early, and unintentionally send signals that say, "Please don't get too close." Others respond to those signals without realizing why. Then the lonely person concludes, "See, nobody likes me." The cycle continues. Breaking that cycle begins by questioning your own assumptions. Not every uncomfortable feeling reflects reality. One simple exercise can help. After every social interaction, force yourself to list 3 things that went reasonably well. Maybe they smiled. Maybe they asked another question. Maybe the conversation lasted longer than expected. Your brain naturally stores negative memories more strongly than positive ones. This exercise helps rebalance the picture. Another quality of charismatic people is emotional generosity. What does that mean? They give positive emotions freely. They compliment sincerely. They celebrate other people's successes. They laugh easily. They express appreciation without worrying that it somehow makes them weaker. Many lonely people do the opposite, not because they're bad people, but because they're emotionally exhausted. When you've spent years feeling invisible, your emotional resources become scarce. It starts feeling risky to be open. But warmth is contagious. Researchers studying emotional contagion have shown that emotions spread surprisingly quickly between people. Calm creates calm. Enthusiasm creates enthusiasm. Smiles often produce smiles. The emotional atmosphere you bring into a conversation frequently becomes the atmosphere everyone experiences. Now, let's address confidence. Most people believe confidence comes before action. In reality, it usually follows action. Nobody wakes up one morning magically confident. Confidence is evidence. Every positive interaction becomes another piece of evidence that says, "I can do this." The problem is that isolated people rarely collect enough evidence because they avoid situations that would create it. The solution isn't throwing yourself into overwhelming social environments, it's creating many small victories. Talk to the cashier. Ask a coworker about their weekend. Start one brief conversation every day. These interactions may seem insignificant. They're not. Your brain learns through repetition. Every successful conversation weakens the fear network and strengthens the confidence network. Over weeks and months, those tiny moments accumulate into a completely different self-image. There's another surprising habit shared by charismatic people. They're comfortable with silence. People trapped in social anxiety often rush to fill every pause because silence feels dangerous. But brief pauses don't usually make conversations awkward. Panicking about them does. Allow yourself a second to think. Smile. Maintain relaxed eye contact. The other person usually experiences this as confidence rather than discomfort. Now, let's discuss authenticity. Many people searching for charisma accidentally become performers. They memorize conversation tricks, they rehearse jokes, they imitate influencers. But people are remarkably good at detecting when someone is performing instead of connecting. Authenticity doesn't mean saying everything you think. It means letting your genuine personality appear instead of constantly editing yourself. If you're naturally thoughtful, don't pretend to be wildly energetic. If you're naturally humorous, don't suppress it. Charisma grows fastest when confidence amplifies your real personality instead of replacing it. One of the most encouraging findings in psychology comes from the work of Professor Carol Dweck on mindset. People who believe personal qualities can grow consistently improve more than people who believe those qualities are fixed. If you believe, "I'm just awkward," you'll unconsciously protect that identity. If instead you believe, "I'm learning social skills," every conversation becomes practice instead of a final exam. That small shift changes everything. Finally, remember this. The opposite of charisma isn't being quiet. It isn't being introverted. It isn't needing time alone. The opposite of charisma is being trapped inside your own fears. When those fears begin fading, your attention naturally moves toward other people. You become more curious, more relaxed, more expressive, more approachable. And people start responding differently, not because you've become someone else, because they're finally getting to meet the person who was hidden underneath all the anxiety. If you've been lonely for a long time, don't expect your entire life to change after one conversation. Think of charisma the way you'd think about physical fitness. Nobody becomes strong after a single workout, but someone who trains consistently for 6 months often looks like a completely different person. Social confidence works the same way. Every conversation is a repetition. Every smile is practice. Every moment of courage rewires your expectations. The person you become next year depends far more on these small daily moments than on any dramatic transformation. And here's what I hope you'll remember after this video ends. You are not condemned to remain the person loneliness convinced you that you are. The voice telling you that you'll always be unpopular, always be isolated, or always struggle to connect with others is not predicting the future. It's describing your past. The future is still unwritten, and every genuine conversation you choose to have writes a different ending. So, the next time you walk into a room, don't ask yourself, will they like me? Ask instead, how can I leave this person feeling a little better than before we met? That single question has the power to transform not only your conversations, but eventually your entire life.